The unforgiving Wyoming wilderness of 1875 swallowed many men whole, but Elijah Wade wasn't one of them. This poor cowboy found himself staring at a half-dead black mail-order bride in an overturned wagon during a thunderstorm, knowing that saving her meant inviting trouble from a town that already despised him. What Elijah couldn't know was that the dying woman carried his family's stolen pocket watch, the only link to the sister torn from him 15 years ago. Elijah's calloused hands could break a wild horse, but his heart still bled for the family he'd never stopped searching for. A cabin ablaze in the darkness. Inside, a black woman and a white cowboy stood off against armed men. The leader stepped forward, a wealthy, well-dressed rancher with papers proving ownership of a mail-order bride. The woman stepped forward, revealing a pocket watch. The rancher's face drained of color. He reached for his gun. 3 months earlier, dust settled on everything Elijah Wade owned. His cabin stood small against the Wyoming Territory's vastness. Inside lay a bed, a table, and memories of better days. He worked an unwanted plot while the town whispered. Whiskey and work filled his days. The locals avoided the quiet man with haunted eyes. The storm came sudden. Rain hammered his tin roof while wind threatened to tear it away. Between thunder crashes, he heard it, a scream, human and desperate. Elijah grabbed his lantern and rifle, stepping into the downpour. 50 yards from his cabin, the rain revealed a wagon overturned in the mud. A horse lay dead in its traces. Moving closer, his light caught movement inside the broken wagon. A woman's hand, dark-skinned and bloodied, reached toward him. She wore a fine traveling dress, now torn and soaked. Blood mixed with rain across her forehead. Not breathing right. Ribs may be broken. When he lifted her, she didn't make a sound. Letters and papers scattered around the wreckage told a story. Nora Johnson, traveling from St. Louis to marry Edmund Barrett, the cattle baron from the next county over. A mail-order bride with proper documentation. The nearest doctor was a 2-day ride. She wouldn't survive that journey. Elijah carried her to his cabin, laid her on his bed. For 3 days she burned with fever while he cooled her brow. When she spoke, it was in fragments, calling names he didn't know. On the 4th day, her eyes opened clear. "Where am I?" "My homestead. Found you in the storm." Elijah kept his distance. Wagons destroyed. She tried to sit up, winced hard. "I need to reach Mr. Barrett." "Not in this condition." Nora studied him with weary eyes. "Why help me?" He turned away, stoked the fire. Anyone would. Number they wouldn't. The town noticed his absence. Elijah rode in for supplies, found men gathering at the general store. Conversation died when he entered. "Need medicine," he told the shopkeeper, "and bandages." The man squinted. "You ain't hurt." "Got someone sick at my place." The sheriff stepped forward from the group, a tall man with a star pinned crookedly to his vest. "Heard you're harboring a colored woman out there, Wade." Elijah kept his face still. "Found someone, heard in the storm. That someone belonged to Barrett." The sheriff leaned closer. "Because word is he's missing a mail-order bride, offering good money to whoever finds her. She's hurt bad. Can't travel." The shopkeeper pushed supplies across the counter. "No credit this time." Elijah emptied his pockets. "This cover it." The man's eyes were cold. "Best not make trouble for yourself, Wade." Back at the cabin, Nora sat propped against the wall, color returning to her face. She watched him unpack the supplies. "They gave you trouble?" Elijah shrugged. "Nothing new." That night, her fever returned. She thrashed in the bed, calling out names in her sleep. Elijah kept the fire burning, changed the cool cloth on her forehead. When she quieted, he checked her traveling trunk for a nightdress, something to replace her ruined clothes. Inside, beneath carefully folded garments, his hand found something hard and round, a pocket watch, gold with an engraving on the back. His hands shook as he turned it over, a tree with roots spelling out Wade in intricate script. His father's watch, the one he'd given his sister before their family was torn apart 15 years ago. Elijah stared at Nora's sleeping face, seeing it now with new eyes, the shape of her jaw, their mother's high cheekbones. He returned the watch carefully, closed the trunk, sat by the fire until dawn broke. A telegram arrived with the morning sun. The delivery boy looked nervous on Elijah's. "Porch, Sheriff asked me to bring this." He thrust the paper forward. "It's from Barrett. Reward for return of mail-order bride. Stop. $500. Stop. Likely injured in storm. Stop. $500. Enough to save his failing homestead. Enough to start fresh somewhere else." Nora appeared in the doorway behind him, wrapped in his blanket, still weak, but standing. "Is that about me?" Elijah crumpled the paper. "Nothing important." She studied his face. "You're a poor liar, Mr. Wade. Brent's looking for you, offering reward money." Her shoulders tensed. "You need that money." "Not that bad." For a week they existed in careful balance. Nora gained strength daily, helping with small tasks around the cabin. They spoke little but watched each other when they thought the other wasn't looking. Elijah saw how she traced the grain of his wooden table with delicate fingers, how she hummed while washing dishes, how she stared at the horizon each evening. The search parties started the second week, riders crossing his land, watching his cabin from distant ridges. Barrett's men, looking for the woman who never arrived. Elijah took to keeping his rifle closer. "Why haven't you told them I'm here?" Nora asked one night over a simple supper. "You need that money. Where I'm from, people help each other. And where is that?" Her eyes studied him carefully. "Georgia. Before the war." He kept his focus on his plate. "Born on a plantation near Savannah." She set her spoon down. "Lost my whole family when I was 9. Sold apart." Elijah met her eyes across the table. "Me too." The pocket watch burned in his mind, the chance too remote, yet her face carried shadows of his mother's. Nora reached for her tea. "After freedom came, I worked as a seamstress, then saw Barrett's advertisement for a bride. Long way to come for marriage. I had my reasons." She looked away. That night, while Nora slept, Elijah made his decision. Barrett's reward would save his land, but the pocket watch demanded answers. He'd protect her until she was fully healed, then learn the truth about the watch, about her connection to Barrett, about the possibility that sat like a stone in his chest. The sister he'd lost might be sleeping under his roof. Outside, Barrett's men watched from the ridgeline, waiting. Spring came slow to Wyoming. The ground beneath the cabin thawed by inches, revealing itself in stages like a cautious woman. Nora's strength returned with the warming days, first walking the cabin's length, then to the barn and back. Soon she joined Elijah for morning chores. Her hands were not soft. They knew work. She gathered eggs while he milked the thin cow, split kindling while he chopped logs. Neither mentioned Barrett's reward or the pocket watch. One morning, she studied his failing crops. "Your furrows run wrong for this land." Elijah leaned on his hoe. "How so?" "Water pools here," she pointed to muddy depressions, "should cut channels crossways." That afternoon, they replanted together, soil under fingernails, sun on backs. The work carried its own intimacy. She knew farming, knew which seeds needed what soil, where to place stones to slow water flow. Knowledge passed through generations. At night, they circled each other with quiet courtesy. He slept on a pallet by the fire. She took his bed despite protests. They ate facing each other across his rough table. "Your family?" he asked one evening. "Any survive?" Nora folded her hands. "Mother died before the war ended. Father and brother were sold years before that." "Where?" "Don't know. Owner kept father's pocket watch, though. I took it when I left." Elijah's spoon froze midway to his mouth. May I see it sometime? Her eyes narrowed. Why? Just curious about the craftsmanship. She changed the subject. Barrett's men still ride the boundaries of your land. Their presence a constant reminder. 4 riders now watching the cabin from different positions each day. In town, the whispers grew louder. The store clerk refused service. The blacksmith doubled his prices. Only the widow Parker showed kindness, slipping extra coffee into his sack. They're planning something, she whispered. Barrett's offering more money now. The sheriff found Elijah loading supplies. Wade, this has gone on long enough. She's still recovering. She belongs to Barrett, legal and proper. People don't belong to people anymore, the sheriff spat. He paid for passage. Has the contract. That colored girl is his by rights. Elijah's hand tightened on his rifle. She'll leave when she's ready. That night, a storm rolled in from the mountains. Not rain, but electricity. Dry lightning split the sky open, the air thick with tension. Nora stood in the doorway, watching. Nature's display. Light flashed across her face, revealing expressions Elijah couldn't interpret. Reminds me of when you found me, she said. He joined her, keeping careful distance. The charged air made his skin prickle. Why haven't you taken the reward? She asked. You need money. Same reason you haven't walked to Barrett's yet. Her eyes met his. And what reason is that? The question hung between them, heavier than the thunderheads above. A sudden crack split the night, not lightning, but a fallen tree branch against the roof. Nora startled, instinctively gripping Elijah's forearm. They stood frozen, her hand on his arm, his breathing suddenly shallow. She didn't remove her hand immediately. When she did, her fingers trailed down his sleeve. I should check the roof, he said. I'll help. They worked in the storm's flashing light, passing tools without words, her steadying the ladder while he cleared debris. When rain finally broke, they rushed inside, soaked through, laughing in the way people do when tension breaks. The cabin suddenly too small for their awareness of each other. Elijah stoked the fire while Nora changed behind a blanket hung for privacy. The pocket watch weighed on his mind, the questions he couldn't ask directly. Your brother, he tried. What was his name? She emerged in dry clothes. Elijah. The name struck him like physical pain. He turned to hide his face. Same as yours, she continued, though we called him Eli. His hands shook as he arranged logs. Common name. I was 7 when they took him. He gave me Father's watch to keep safe. She stepped closer. Why do you ask? Just wondering. That night neither slept well. The storm passed but left a different electricity behind. Questions unasked. Suspicions unconfirmed. Morning brought unwelcome clarity. While Nora prepared breakfast, Elijah noticed her trunk partially open, the corner of a letter visible. He should have looked away, respected her privacy. Instead, he waited until she went to the well. The letter was hidden beneath her clothing, addressed to Edmund Barrett. Not a love letter, but an accusation. Words carefully chosen, but filled with contained fury. I know who you were before Wyoming. Know what you did to my family in South Carolina, the overseer who separated us, the watch you kept as trophy. I have come for truth, not marriage. Elijah. Read it 3 times, put it back exactly as found. Barrett, the overseer who had sold his family apart, who had kept his father's watch, and Nora, not seeking marriage, but justice. The pieces aligned with painful clarity. The watch, the shared history, the familiar shape of her eyes. When she returned, he watched her with new understanding, the way she tilted her head when listening, their mother's gesture. That afternoon, riders approached the cabin, 6 men with Barrett leading, not just watching now, but coming to claim. Elijah positioned his rifle by the window. Stay inside. Nora joined him instead, peering through worn curtains. "They won't leave without me? They'll leave with nothing." Barrett halted his men 30 yards out, called toward the cabin. "Wade, time's up. Send out what belongs to me." Elijah stepped onto the porch, rifle casual but ready. "Nobody here belongs?" "To anyone. That woman's my bride. Paid for, fair." Elijah felt certainty crystallize within him, knew what must be done. "Nora," he said quietly, "that pocket watch. I need to see it." She looked at him sharply. Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You know? Show me, please." She disappeared inside while Elijah kept his rifle trained on the waiting men, returned with the gold watch in her palm. He didn't need to examine it closely. The tree with roots forming their name, his father's most prized possession. "That watch belonged to my father," he said. "I gave it to my sister before we were separated. Her name was Nora." Her fingers closed around the watch. "My brother was called Eli." Their eyes met in perfect recognition. 15 years of separation collapsed in an instant. "You found me," she whispered. "Or you found me." Barrett's voice broke. Their moment. "Send her out now, Wade. Last warning." Elijah turned back to the waiting men. His sister stood beside him now, the truth between them bright as lightning. "You should see this watch, Barrett," he called. "Might recognize it." Barrett's men withdrew that day, not defeated, but regrouping. The predator backing away to consider new angles of attack. Elijah and Nora sat at the table until dawn. 15 years of separation spread between them like scattered photographs. Each memory examined, compared, verified. Their mother had died 3 years after the family separation. Their father sold to a plantation in Mississippi, never heard from again. Nora had worked as a house servant, then seamstress after emancipation. Elijah had escaped north, fought for the Union, drifted west, seeking anonymity. Both had carried the same wound. Both had adapted around it like trees growing despite lightning strikes. "How did you find him?" Elijah asked as morning light filtered. "Through the cabin windows." She rubbed the pocket watch with her thumb. "Overheard 2 men in St. Louis describing Wyoming's cattle baron Barrett, his distinctive scar, the same man who'd been overseer on the Wilkinson plantation when we tried to run, when Father tried to buy us free." Her jaw tightened. "Barrett took the money, sold us anyway, kept Father's gold watch. And you came west to confront him, to make him remember." She looked down at her hands. "To make him face what he did." Elijah stood, paced the tight confines of his cabin. "He'll come back with more men." "Then we need evidence." They formed their plan between chores, between rebuilding the life that had been stolen from them. Elijah wrote letters to contacts back east, former Union soldiers who kept records of plantation overseers known for cruelty, names, dates, documented sales. Nora crafted a careful timeline, Barrett's movements after the war, his rapid rise. In Wyoming territory, properties acquired through means that wouldn't withstand scrutiny. The general store closed its doors when Elijah approached. The blacksmith threatened his horse, but the widow Parker slipped him information with his supplies. "Barrett wasn't always Barrett," she whispered. "Came here right after the war. Different name then." "What name?" "Wilkins. Samuel Wilkins." She glanced around nervously. "Changed it after some trouble in Denver." Elijah and Nora added this to their growing documentation. A case built piece by piece like a cabin in hostile territory. The town doctor finally came when Nora developed a cough, an older man with tired eyes and a medical bag worn at the corners. "Inflammation of the lungs," he diagnosed. "Not serious if treated properly." He left medicine and instructions, gave Elijah a long look before mounting his horse. "You're playing a dangerous game, Wade. Just trying to live. Not in this town. You aren't." The doctor adjusted his hat. "Barrett owns half the county. Judge included. 3 days later, Elijah rode to Fort Laramie. The Army kept records, tracked troublemakers who moved between territories. Captain Jenkins had served with Elijah during the war. The fort stood against Wyoming's massive sky like a statement of intent. Men in uniform moved with purpose, a world with clear rules. Captain Jenkins' office was spare, a desk, a map, a man whose beard had gone gray since Elijah had seen him last. Wade, he extended a hand. Long time. Need information, Captain. Man named Edmund Barrett, the cattle baron before Wyoming, when he was Samuel Wilkins. The captain's eyes narrowed. Official request? Personal. Records were produced. A thin file documenting Samuel Wilkins. Complaints filed in Denver, assault charges dropped, a warrant never served. Jenkins watched Elijah read. Why dig this up? He separated my family, sold us apart. The captain nodded, slowly, understanding the weight behind the simple words. Take copies. Nothing official. Back at the homestead, Nora had fashioned the cabin into something almost like a home. Curtains from old flour sacks, a carved wooden spoon, small touches against vast emptiness. They spread their evidence on the table, a case built from fragments, Barrett's true identity, his crimes in South Carolina, documented sales records with his signature, the pocket watch connecting everything. Not enough for a white man's court. Nora said, not taking it to court. They worked their strategy like they worked the land, methodically with attention to detail, preparing for the confrontation they knew would come. Barrett made his next move a week later, not with men, but with law. The sheriff rode up alone, paper in hand. Eviction notice, he said. Barrett owns this land. Elijah took the document. Legal words arranged to justify theft. Been paying my lease for 3 years. Says here you're behind. You know Barrett paid. For that signature. The sheriff didn't meet his eyes. Judge signed the order. 3 days to clear out. Elijah watched the sheriff ride away. He's forcing our hand. That evening, a rider approached from town. Not one of Barrett's men, but the widow Parker's son, young, nervous. He handed over a note before galloping away. Barrett knows who she is, it read. Doctor told him everything. Coming tonight with men. Night fell across the land like a curtain dropping. Elijah cleaned his rifle by lamplight. Nora gathered their evidence into a leather satchel. No words needed. The time for talking had passed. They positioned themselves for what was coming. Rifle by the window, back door unbolted for escape if needed. The pocket watch on the table between them. Nora touched Elijah's arm. If this goes wrong, it won't. If it does, her fingers pressed into his sleeve. Finding you was worth the journey. Hoofbeats broke the night's silence, many horses moving at a walk, deliberate, unhurried. Lamplight revealed Barrett leading 12 men, some armed with rifles, others carrying torches. Barrett himself rode forward alone. Wade! His voice carried clearly through the night air. Send out my property now. Elijah stepped onto the porch, rifle held ready but not aimed. Nothing here belongs to you, Barrett. Or should I say Wilkins? The name landed like a stone in water, ripples of confusion among Barrett's men. Barrett's face hardened. Don't know what you're talking about. Samuel Wilkins, overseer on the Wilkinson plantation, Elijah's voice remained steady. The man who sold my family apart. Nora emerged from the cabin, the pocket watch dangling from her hand, catching torchlight. Remember this, Mr. Barrett? She held it higher. My father's watch, the one you kept after selling us apart. Barrett's men exchanged glances. This wasn't the simple recovery of a mail-order bride they'd been promised. Barrett studied them through narrowed eyes, calculating as always. That woman's mine by contract. Elijah called, She's my sister, the girl you separated from our family. Nora stepped forward, fearless despite the armed men. You paid for a mail-order bride. You paid for a lie. Elijah reached for the satchel at his feet. We have documentation, sales records with your signature, warrant from Denver. The doctor pushed his horse forward from among Barrett's men. I told you, Barrett. They've been investigating you. Nora's eyes narrowed. You told him everything. The doctor wouldn't meet her gaze. Man has to protect himself in these parts. By betraying us? Not a question, but a statement. Barrett signaled his men. Enough talk. Take them both. The men dismounted, spread out around the cabin, torches held high. Elijah raised his rifle. First man steps foot on my property gets a bullet. The night balanced on knife's edge. Men with torches and guns against two siblings with truth and a gold watch. The first torch flew through the air, landed on the cabin roof. Dry wood caught quickly. A second torch followed. Fire bloomed against the night sky. The cabin Elijah had built with his own hands began to burn, and so they stood, Elijah with his rifle, Nora with the watch, as flames illuminated them from behind. Barrett and his men formed a semicircle before them. The confrontation they had sought now arrived with fire and guns, everything they had worked toward coming to its inevitable head. Fire transformed the night sky into falsely golden dawn. Heat pressed against Elijah's back while Barrett's men formed their half-circle before him. Flames consumed the only home he'd known since the war. Nora stood beside him, shoulders squared, the pocket watch dangling from her fingers, catching firelight. And memory. Last chance, Wade, Barrett called over the crackling flames. Step aside. She's my sister, Elijah said, the girl you separated from our family. Nora stepped forward, head high. I came west for justice, not marriage. The satchel of evidence lay at Elijah's feet. Documentation gathered piece by painful piece, everything connecting Barrett to his former identity as overseer Samuel Wilkins. This is absurd, Barrett hissed. The evidence is overwhelming, Judge Armstrong announced. Edmund Barrett is indeed Samuel Wilkins, wanted for crimes in Denver territory. Barrett's face remained impassive, a man accustomed to calculating odds. Additionally, the judge continued, the evidence of his actions as an overseer, while not criminally prosecutable due to when and where they occurred, are morally reprehensible. The prosecutor cleared his throat. He'll be extradited to Denver to face charges there. Barrett leaned forward. What about my ranch? My holdings? Your property remains your property, the judge replied, though I imagine a portion might be claimed for restitution. Restitution? Barrett's laugh held no humor. Elijah stepped forward. For our family? For 15 years stolen. Silence filled the study. The justice of courts meeting the deeper justice of moral debt. Judge Armstrong nodded slowly. The court recognizes the unique harm done to these individuals. As restitution, I order the transfer of the East Valley property to Elijah Wade. That's my best grazing land, Barrett protested. Consider yourself fortunate, the judge replied. The alternative is prison before your Denver trial. Barrett studied Elijah and Nora with cold calculation. The East Valley? Then nothing more. The documents were drawn and signed, land transferring, from former master to former property, the circle bending towards something resembling justice. Summer found Elijah and Nora building anew on the valley land, rich soil, clean water, room to grow. Other formerly enslaved families joined them, drawn by letters and opportunity. A community formed, homes of logs and hopes, fields planted with vegetables and determination, children running free under wide Wyoming skies. Autumn brought the harvest and something unexpected. An invitation to the town's founding celebration, not from everyone, but from enough. The widow Parker, the blacksmith who had once overcharged, the new sheriff elected after Miller resigned. They attended, stood straight back among those who had once shunned them, not seeking approval, but claiming their place. Winter settled across the land, blanketing their new beginnings in pristine white. The community gathered for Christmas, celebration in the largest cabin, songs and food carrying memories of places left behind. A knock interrupted their festivities. The door opened to reveal a figure Elijah never expected to see again. Barrett, thinner, older, somehow his extradition. Delayed by weather and legal maneuvering, he entered alone, removed his hat. Silence spread through the gathering as he approached Elijah and Nora. "May I speak with you outside?" The three stood in the crisp night air, stars impossibly bright above them. Barrett's breath clouded in the cold. "I came to apologize," he said finally, though words were inadequate. Nora's face remained impassive. "Why now?" Facing one's past becomes unavoidable eventually. Barrett reached into his coat. "I brought something." A worn Bible, its leather, cover cracked with age. "From your family home in South Carolina? I kept it all these years." Nora accepted it with trembling hands, opened to the family record page where births and deaths were documented in faded ink. Barrett watched her, his right hand trembling slightly as he extended it to the Bible's edge, the involuntary pause becoming more pronounced, the same distinctive tremor their father had developed after a severe beating years ago. Nora's eyes widened as recognition washed over her face. She stared at Barrett's features, seeing past the mask worn for decades, past the cruelty and deception, to the man beneath. The man they had been searching for all along, her voice barely audible even in the winter stillness. "Father?" And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It helps motivate me to write each story. See you tomorrow.